You? Total joke. The words tore through the chamber like a gunshot. Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, unleashing them with all the weight of power and disdain. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She stepped forward with the precision of a warrior in the calm of steel, her gaze cutting through the tension, carrying the voices of millions silenced by injustice. Every step echoed on the polished floor, every breath deliberate, every movement a statement. She would not bow. Trump's grin was sharp, predatory, the kind that promised challenge and danger in equal measure. "So this is the famous little crusader," he said, letting the words drip with mockery. "Do you think courage alone can bend the rules of power, Crockett? Do you even understand the world you're trying to change?" Jasmine's voice was steady, piercing through the tension like a blade. "I understand more than you ever will. I understand truth. I understand responsibility. I understand the courage it takes to stand when everyone else looks away." A ripple moved through the chamber. Reporters leaned forward, pens hovering. Staff froze mid-step. Every eye was fixed on the two forces facing off, like lightning about to strike. Trump stepped closer, his tone dropping, venom lacing every word. "Courage, responsibility, those are just words you cling to. You're a child playing in a world built by men who actually get things done. Watch and learn how power works, little girl." Jasmine's stare never wavered. Her reply was measured, sharp, and unstoppable. "Power is meaningless if it destroys the people it claims to protect. And if that's your measure of achievement, then yes, I will show you what courage looks like in the face of chaos." Murmurs swept through the chamber. Some gasped, some scribbled furiously. Trump's smirk faltered for the briefest second, but he masked it quickly, leaning forward, lowering his voice with precision. "Everyone sees your act, Crockett. Cute, really. But the courtroom isn't for heroes, it's for results. And you're a joke." The pause that followed was deafening. Silence, thick and suffocating, hung over the room. Then Jasmine's response cut through it all, precise and lethal. "A joke is what people call those who stay silent when injustice calls for action. If that's what I am, then I am proud to be a joke." The reaction was instantaneous. The room collectively exhaled. Trump's confident posture wavered ever so slightly, caught off guard by a force he hadn't anticipated. Jasmine stood unshaken, a living emblem of resolve and defiance. Every journalist leaned forward. Every aide and observer felt it. This was no ordinary confrontation. Every glance, every word, every gesture was charged with history, with the struggle between raw power and unyielding justice. The tension was electric, stretching from one end of the chamber to the other. And for those watching closely, the story had only just begun. The first strike had been delivered, but the war was far from over. Every decision, every word, every second mattered, and Harrison's stories will be there to follow each pulse-pounding moment, showing the courage, the clashes, and the stakes like never before. Jasmine took her place, ready. The gavel had yet to fall, but the battle lines were drawn, and every eye in that room knew this was only the beginning. Trump leaned slightly forward, his fingers drumming on the podium, a slow, deliberate rhythm that seemed to mark the heartbeat of the chamber. His eyes locked onto Jasmine, sharp, calculating, as though measuring every ounce of her courage. "So, Crockett," he said, voice smooth but lethal, "you think standing there and waving your morals like a flag will make anyone listen? It's cute, really, almost endearing in a desperate sort of way. But let's be honest, you're outmatched, outclassed, and over your head." The words hit like stones thrown into still water. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some leaned forward instinctively. Others tensed, waiting for Jasmine's response, sensing the storm about to erupt. Jasmine's eyes narrowed slightly, a spark igniting within their depths. Her hands clenched at her sides for a fraction of a second, subtle enough to be human, commanding enough to be dangerous. Then she spoke, her voice smooth but edged with fire. "Endearing? That's what you call the voices of millions who have been silenced for decades? You mistake compassion for weakness, Trump. But make no mistake, weakness is in your arrogance, not in my resolve." The chamber shifted in that instant. Reporters held their breath. Some witnesses exchanged glances, realizing the tension was no longer a mere formality. It was war in its rawest form. Trump blinked, a subtle falter, almost imperceptible, but Jasmine noticed. She had found the crack. He recovered quickly, tilting his head with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Arrogance? My dear Crockett, I've built empires, led nations, and survived storms you couldn't even imagine. Do you really think one woman's words can topple decades of influence? Jasmine tilted her head ever so slightly, a wry, cold smile curling on her lips. One woman's words? No, Mr. President, it's the truth that does the toppling. And the truth doesn't fear your empires, your titles, or your so-called storms. The room seemed to pulse with every word. Attorneys straightened in their chairs. Witnesses shifted nervously, some gripping papers tighter than necessary. Every flick of an eye, every tense breath added to the electric pressure. Trump slammed a hand lightly on the podium, a percussive punctuation. The truth? Ha! You don't even understand what reality demands. It's not about ideals, Crockett. It's about survival, about power. And right now, you're standing in a room that will eat your principles alive. Jasmine's stance didn't waver. Her hands relaxed but remained deliberate, almost like a coiled spring ready to strike. She leaned slightly forward, letting her voice fill every corner of the chamber. Principles are what survive when empires crumble. Power without justice is empty, and survival without integrity is meaningless. That's the reality I fight for, Trump, and I will not be consumed by your intimidation. For a fraction of a second, Trump's confidence faltered again. The audience noticed. The room held its collective breath. His jaw tightened, and his eyes darted briefly to the sides, measuring the spectators, the cameras, the lawyers, and then back to Jasmine, whose gaze hadn't shifted. He leaned back, his fingers tightening around the edge of the podium. Impressive words, Crockett, but words are cheap, and here in this chamber, results speak louder than speeches. Can you back them up? Can you survive when everything you believe in is tested? Jasmine's lips curved into a thin, lethal smile. I don't just speak, Trump. I act. Every word you hear is backed by the lives of those you've ignored, by the courage of people you've underestimated. I will survive, not because I'm stronger than you, but because I'm standing for something that cannot be silenced. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. The tension tightened like a drawn bowstring. Journalists scribbled furiously, their pens trembling almost unconsciously. Witnesses leaned closer to catch each syllable. The chamber was no longer a room. It was a battlefield, and every glance, every word, every gesture was a strike or a parry. Trump's eyes narrowed, the grin replaced by a sharp, calculating glare. He straightened, voice lowering into a controlled menace. You've got fire, Crockett. I'll give you that. But fire without shield, without armor, is destruction waiting to happen. Do you even understand what you're facing? Jasmine let her gaze sweep over him slowly, deliberately, each second a measured challenge. Her hands remained relaxed, but the subtle flexing of her fingers spoke volumes of restrained strength. I understand exactly what I'm facing. I face a man who mistakes intimidation for authority, cruelty for leadership, and arrogance for wisdom. And yet here I stand, unshaken, undeterred, unwavering. A tense silence followed. Then a faint murmur of admiration rose among the legal observers. Every participant felt it. This wasn't just rhetoric. This was strategy, courage, and truth converging in a chamber built to test both skill and spirit. And in that silence, one truth became undeniable. Jasmine had not just responded, she had dominated the narrative, turning Trump's attempts at humiliation into a mirror reflecting his own flaws. The energy in the room shifted. The battle had escalated beyond personal attacks. It had become a war of principle, vision, and integrity. As the first round of words settled into the echoes of the chamber, a quiet but irresistible pull threaded through the minds of everyone watching. To witness every confrontation, every counterstrike, every moment of courage and cunning, they would need to follow Harrison's stories, because this story was far from over, and every detail mattered. Jasmine's eyes never left Trump. Her stance remained firm. The gavel had yet to fall, but the clash had already ignited, and every heartbeat in the chamber knew. The war for truth, justice, and dignity was only gaining momentum. Then she moved. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents, thick and crisp, each page a testament to the truth she had fought so hard to uncover. The room tensed instantly. Reporters leaned forward, cameras shifting, capturing the moment when words would become evidence, and evidence would become a weapon. These, Jasmine said, her voice steady and clear, are records of transactions, communications, and actions that reveal patterns of abuse, deception, and corruption spanning years. Patterns that you, Mr. Trump, have tried to hide from the public, from the courts, from the very nation you swore to serve. Trump's grin faltered, just for a flicker of a second. He opened his mouth, attempting a rebuttal, but the words stumbled over themselves. Fake! It's all fabricated, completely false, he spat, his tone sharp, almost frantic. His confident posture cracked, his eyes flickering to the audience as though looking for allies who weren't there. Jasmine didn't hesitate. She let the silence hang for just long enough to draw in every eye, every ear, every sense in the chamber. And then she struck. Fabricated, she said, leaning forward slightly, her gaze razor sharp, cutting through the room like sunlight through smoke. These are your words, your actions. Your signature is on every page. You have built a career on lies, on intimidation, on manipulating the truth to serve yourself. And now, in the eyes of this nation, you cannot hide. The room shifted. Gasps rose from the spectators. Lawyers leaned closer, some gripping their seats, their pens poised but trembling. Every journalist in the chamber scribbled furiously, some barely breathing as the weight of the revelation sank in. The tension was thick, almost tangible, like the electric charge before a lightning strike. Trump raised a hand, attempting to interrupt, but Jasmine's next words cut through him like a blade. Stop pretending, Mr. Trump. Stop deflecting. Stop hiding behind titles, behind arrogance, behind the illusion of power. The truth doesn't care about your influence. And the people don't respect fear. They respect accountability. And today you will answer for every lie, every manipulation, every betrayal. His eyes narrowed. The chamber felt smaller now, more oppressive. Every witness, every attorney, every journalist sensing the shift. Jasmine wasn't just speaking. She was dominating the narrative. Every word, every gesture, every pointed glance was a strike, a dismantling of the walls Trump had built around his persona. Trump's lips tightened. He tried to smile, but it was thin, forced, failing to mask the tension that had crept into his frame. These documents, they mean nothing. You're just trying to what? Jasmine interrupted sharply, leaning slightly closer, her voice calm but lethal. To what, Mr. Trump? To pretend you are untouchable? To pretend the people don't see your games, your manipulations, your cruelty? The only thing you are untouchable to is self-delusion. And now the world sees through it. Every deception, every lie, every act of cowardice. The room seemed to vibrate with the force of her words. Even the air felt charged, a mix of tension, disbelief, and awe. Witnesses shifted, lawyers exchanged rapid glances, reporters' pens moved at feverish speed. Every eye followed Jasmine's movements, every ear hung on each syllable, and Trump's composure, once so seemingly absolute, was fracturing under the weight of undeniable truth. She produced a flash drive next, setting it gently on the podium. And if words aren't enough, perhaps visuals will help. This footage, obtained through proper channels, illustrates the extent of the manipulation, the coercion, and the disregard for law and ethics. It's undeniable. It's factual. It's damning. Trump's hand trembled slightly as he reached forward, trying to seize the narrative, but it was too late. Jasmine's poise, her clarity, her unflinching courage had seized control. The audience could sense it. The tide had turned. The chamber was no longer a neutral space. It was a battlefield of intellect and morality where deceit and truth clashed in real time. She looked around, slowly, deliberately. Her eyes swept past reporters, past lawyers, past witnesses, landing on Trump one final time. Her voice, calm but edged with steel, resonated across the chamber. The era of hiding behind power, of using fear to silence others, is over. The truth will not be buried. Justice will not be delayed. And those who think they are above accountability will be exposed. A silence followed, heavy, thick, absolute. Every heartbeat, every breath in the chamber seemed to wait for the next move. And in that pause, Jasmine's presence filled the room completely. She had revealed her secret weapon, and in doing so, she had shown that courage, preparation, and truth could topple even the tallest of walls. For those watching beyond the walls of Congress, the message was clear. Every detail, every twist, every confrontation mattered, and Harrison's stories would bring every moment to life, chronicling the battles, the revelations, and the courage that refused to be silenced. Jasmine straightened, her hands resting lightly on the podium, her gaze unwavering. The gavel had not yet fallen, but the war had shifted irreversibly. The battlefield was set, the lines drawn, and every eye in that room knew. The exposure of truth was just beginning, and the consequences would echo far beyond the chamber's walls. Trump shifted in his seat, a calculated calm that barely concealed the tension beneath. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth but sharp, "let us not be distracted by theatrics. The documents presented are hearsay at best, procedural violations at worst. The law is clear, and precedent favors established authority. You cannot simply discard decades of legal practice and claim righteousness." The chamber buzzed with anticipation. Members of Congress leaned forward, attorneys exchanged quick, tense glances, journalists paused mid-note. This was no longer just confrontation. It was strategy, intellect, and audacity colliding. Jasmine stood, her stance deliberate, her eyes locking on Trump with unwavering focus. "Authority," she said, voice calm but slicing through the tension like a knife, "is not a shield for corruption. Procedure does not excuse deception, and precedent, Mr. Trump, does not grant immunity to those who betray trust. The law exists to protect justice, not to conceal lies under the guise of power." Trump's eyebrows shot up, an almost imperceptible flicker of surprise. He leaned back, attempting to reclaim control. "Bold words, but let's not ignore the facts. The process is complex, the rules stringent. One misstep, and your entire argument crumbles. You are skilled in rhetoric, Crockett, but law is not won by passion alone." Jasmine's lips curled into a thin, deliberate smile. She raised a hand, flipping to a page in her meticulously organized dossier. "Then let us examine the facts, shall we? Exhibit A, B, and C, documented communications, signed agreements, and verified witness statements. Each a piece of the puzzle proving misrepresentation, negligence, and intentional misconduct. And before you attempt to distract with your theatrics, note that every detail has been legally verified, cross-referenced, and corroborated." The room reacted instantly. Murmurs rose, heads turned, pens scribbled. Even Trump's allies paused, sensing that the narrative was slipping from his grasp. Jasmine's calm precision contrasted sharply with the former president's attempt at intimidation. "You misunderstand," Trump spat, leaning forward now, voice low, venomous. "You think that lining up papers and waving them around is enough? You think the people care about documents over results? About evidence over action? You are naive, Crockett. Dangerous in your delusion, perhaps, but still naive." Jasmine didn't blink. She stepped closer, eyes burning with controlled intensity. "Naive," she repeated, voice cold steel. "You call defending truth naive? You call accountability a delusion? This is not naivete, Mr. Trump. It's clarity. Clarity that sees through your attempts to obscure the law, to manipulate the system, to intimidate those who dare to challenge you." A tense hush fell. Every member of the chamber leaned in, hanging on her words. Every syllable was a strike, a dismantling of the smoke and mirrors Trump had perfected over decades. Trump's jaw tightened, and he tried another legal maneuver, citing obscure clauses and procedural loopholes, attempting to muddy the waters. "According to Rule 43, Paragraph 12, Jasmine cut him off, her voice rising, firm but controlled. each word a hammer. Rule 43, paragraph 12. Yes, but notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't permit deception. It doesn't allow the concealment of evidence. It doesn't excuse the obstruction of justice. The law is meant to protect the innocent, to hold the powerful accountable, not to serve as a tool for manipulation and cover-ups. The spectators felt the air thicken with tension. Hands clenched, pens hovered, every heartbeat synced with the rhythm of confrontation. Jasmine's eyes, unwavering, locked on Trump's with a quiet ferocity, daring him to challenge her logic. Every syllable, every pause, every deliberate motion carried authority. Trump tried to respond, to pivot, to inject sarcasm and mockery into his rebuttal, but Jasmine anticipated, countered, and struck again. Mockery, deflection, theatrics, these are your weapons of choice. But reason, evidence, and accountability, they are mine. And no amount of bluster will silence the truth. Even the legal advisors who had seen countless battles in courtrooms across the nation leaned forward, some audibly gasping. The chamber had become a battleground not of fists, but of intellect, wit, and moral clarity. Each statement was a blow, each refutation a parry, each piercing glance a strategy in the war of reason. Trump's face hardened, a flicker of frustration breaking through his practiced composure. Jasmine's rebuttals were surgical, her evidence undeniable, and her courage infectious. She had not just met his challenge, she had turned the battlefield into her arena, exposing hypocrisy, dismantling deception, and asserting authority through logic and precision. By the end of the session, the chamber was electric. Every participant understood that this was no ordinary hearing. It was a war of ideas, a clash of intellects, a fight for justice and credibility. Jasmine had shown that strength was not in titles or fear. It was in clarity, evidence, and the courage to confront power head-on. And for those following the story beyond these walls, every twist, every sharp rebuttal, every piercing truth was available through Harrison Stories, chronicling each confrontation with the intensity, detail, and depth it deserved. Jasmine straightened, hands resting lightly on the podium, her gaze unwavering. The gavel had yet to fall, but the battle of minds had made one truth abundantly clear. In this war, courage, preparation, and intellect were the weapons of the strong, and the weak could only hide behind power and pretense. Then a murmur swept through the chamber. A young legal aide hurried to the front, clutching a folder so thick it seemed to carry the weight of the world. "This just arrived," he announced, voice trembling slightly. "An independent witness has submitted verified evidence. Documents and recordings directly contradicting the defendant's statements." Trump's eyes flickered, a shadow of alarm crossing his face, though he masked it with a quick, forced smile. "Irrelevant," he spat, waving a hand dismissively. "Fabrications. More lies. They can't touch me with these." Jasmine's gaze sharpened, every muscle in her body taut with controlled energy. She leaned forward, her voice low but deadly precise, echoing through the chamber. "Irrelevant? You dare call the truth irrelevant? These documents, these recordings, expose every trick you've hidden behind your titles, every manipulation, every lie you've spun to protect yourself. Your so-called power has no armor against reality." A collective gasp swept through the room. Members of Congress whispered urgently, journalists snapped photos and jotted notes at feverish speed, and even Trump's own advisors exchanged uneasy glances. The tension was palpable, almost suffocating. Trump opened his mouth, attempting to seize control, but the words faltered. "This is fake, completely fabricated. You're—" Jasmine interrupted, a razor edge in her voice that left no room for doubt. "Fake? Fabricated? Every signature, every timestamp, every recorded conversation screams your guilt. You've spent decades perfecting deceit, twisting facts, and hiding behind wealth and influence. But today, Mr. Trump, all of that ends. Every dodge, every scheme, every attempt to evade accountability is laid bare, and you standing there cannot hide anymore." He flinched, a subtle twitch in his jaw, betraying the first real crack in his composure. He tried to regain control, raising a finger, but his voice, once commanding, wavered. "This is political theater, a setup. You can't prove. Jasmine stepped closer, her eyes burning, her voice slicing through his defenses. Political theater? No, this is reality. Reality, Mr. Trump, where actions have consequences and lies meet exposure. You have manipulated systems, bullied, deceived, and yet here you stand, trying to gaslight the people in the same chamber where justice should prevail. And every word you utter now is a confession in disguise. The chamber seemed to contract under the weight of her words. Every spectator, every witness, every journalist held their breath. The room vibrated with intensity, a collision of anger, truth, and the raw thrill of confrontation. Trump's hand tightened on the podium. He attempted another maneuver, pointing to a legal technicality, a procedural loophole he hoped could deflect the growing storm. Procedurally, none of this. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice cold, sharp, and unrelenting. Procedurally? You've cloaked decades of manipulation in procedures, cloaked cruelty in legality, cloaked lies in policy. But procedure does not excuse treachery, and legality does not absolve deception. The law is meant to protect, Mr. Trump, not shield your duplicity, and every attempt to distract, to deflect, to deceive will be dismantled before this chamber and the nation. Trump's confident veneer shattered. His eyes darted nervously to the audience, to advisors, to the press. But the energy Jasmine exuded dominated the room. His voice cracked slightly, a high note of panic betraying the cracks in his composure. This is preposterous. You can't, Jasmine echoed, her tone deadly calm. Because the truth has weight, it has teeth, and it has witnesses. Every act, every lie, every scheme you've employed is now in the light, and the people, this chamber, will see it all. For a tense moment, the room seemed to hang in suspended disbelief. The former president tried to retort, but words failed him, leaving only the tremor of fear barely masked by anger. Spectators shifted in their seats, some standing to get a better view, captivated by the spectacle. Even seasoned attorneys whispered urgently, captivated by Jasmine's precision and the unrelenting exposure of deceit. The chamber had transformed into a battlefield of intellect, courage, and unflinching justice. As Jasmine's gaze swept over the room, landing on Trump one last time, she delivered the final blow for the session, her voice steady but cutting. The era of hiding behind wealth, influence, and intimidation is over. You cannot lie, cheat, or manipulate your way out anymore. Your era of impunity ends here, and the world is watching. A stunned silence followed. Every heartbeat in the chamber seemed to sync with the magnitude of the moment. The gavel remained poised, but the shockwave of revelation had already struck. And for those witnessing beyond the walls of Congress, the story was far from over. Every twist, every confrontation, every explosive moment would be chronicled in exquisite detail by Harrison Stories, because the world deserved to see the courage, the exposure, and the battle for truth unfold in real time. Jasmine straightened fully, letting the silence echo her dominance. The battlefield had shifted, the scales had begun to tip, and one fact remained undeniable. The truth had claimed its first undeniable victory, and the consequences for the deceiver would only grow from here. Trump's face contorted, a storm breaking behind the veneer of control he had clung to for decades. Enough, he roared, slamming a fist on the podium. You think you can stand there and lecture me? You think your little theatrics, your documents, your witnesses mean anything? You, Crockett, you have no idea what you're meddling with. This is power, real power, and you're trying to lecture me about justice? The chamber flinched at the force of his voice. Reporters scribbled furiously. Spectators leaned forward as though bracing for an earthquake. Trump's eyes blazed, scanning the audience, looking for support that wasn't there. Do you know what it costs to hold this office? To wield influence across a nation? To survive attacks from people like you? You're reckless, naive, and dangerous. Jasmine's lips curved into a measured, razor-sharp smile. She stepped closer, leaning lightly on the podium, her voice cutting through the room like a finely honed blade. Reckless? Perhaps. Dangerous? Only to those who have hidden corruption behind power and lies for too long. Naive? I see clearly what you've spent decades trying to obscure. Manipulation, fear, and cowardice masked as authority. You mistake intimidation for respect. But here, in this chamber, the people see the truth, and the truth is never intimidated. Trump's jaw clenched, a subtle tremor betraying his fury. He pointed at her, voice rising, sharp and accusing. You have no idea the chaos you're trying to unleash. Do you think the country will tolerate your attacks? Do you think the people won't turn against someone who dares to challenge me? You're walking into a war you can't win. Jasmine's gaze never wavered, her calm intensity radiating power. A war I cannot win, she echoed, each word deliberate, each syllable a strike. I am not here to win your approval. I am here to stand for justice, for accountability, for the millions silenced by the likes of you. You cannot intimidate me, you cannot frighten me, and you cannot hide from the consequences of your own actions. Today, your reckoning has begun. The room seemed to vibrate with every word. Congress members leaned forward, attorneys exchanged rapid whispers, journalists' pens moved faster than ever. Every syllable Jasmine spoke was a hammer driving stakes into the foundation of deception Trump had tried to build around himself. Trump's hand shook slightly as he reached for the podium, trying to reclaim dominance, but his words faltered. This is impossible. You can't do this, Crockett. No one has ever... You forget, Mr. Trump, Jasmine interrupted, voice unwavering, a steel edge underlining every syllable. That power is temporary. Titles fade. Influence crumbles. Lies are eventually exposed. And courage, integrity, and truth, they endure. Your era of impunity ends not with force, but with accountability. And I will ensure the world sees it. The chamber gasped collectively. Even the most seasoned lawmakers were caught in the grip of the spectacle, witnessing what could only be described as a historic verbal duel. The energy was electric, raw, unrelenting. Every eye followed Jasmine. Every ear hung on each word, and Trump's confident facade began to shatter under the weight of undeniable truth. He tried one last surge, his voice rising to a near scream. You can't! This is political theater! Lies, deceit, none of it will stick. People will laugh at you, Crockett. You're making a fool of yourself. Jasmine's response was immediate, precise, and devastating. She leaned forward, her gaze piercing, voice steady but infused with unyielding fire. A fool? No, Mr. Trump. The fool is the one who believes he can escape accountability forever. The fool is the one who hides cruelty behind arrogance, fear behind power, and deception behind titles. Today, your illusions die. Today, the world sees the man behind the mask. And I promise, justice does not negotiate with liars. Trump staggered slightly, his composure unraveling. The room sensed it, the former titan reduced to flailing words and shallow bluster. Jasmine's calm dominance and unbreakable presence had cornered him completely. Every rebuttal he tried seemed hollow, every threat dissipated under the weight of her precision. The spectators were on the edge of their seats, some standing, some whispering, all riveted. This was no ordinary hearing. This was a historic showdown, a clash of wills, intellect, and morality. Every word, every gesture, every exchange was electric, a confrontation for the ages. Jasmine straightened, her hands resting lightly on the podium, eyes scanning the room, letting her words settle like final echoes of a storm. No compromise for deceit, no mercy for lies, no hiding from the truth. This chamber, this nation, and history itself will remember the choice each of us makes in the face of injustice. I will not yield, I will not falter, and I will not be silenced. A heavy silence followed. The gavel still hung in suspense, but the magnitude of what had occurred was undeniable. Trump, once imposing, now looked exposed, disoriented, and defeated, not by violence but by courage, intellect, and relentless confrontation. For the audience outside these walls, every second of this confrontation, every word of defiance, and every moment of unyielding truth would be chronicled in extraordinary detail by Harrison Stories, ensuring that Jasmine Crockett's unwavering stand and the exposure of power corrupted by arrogance reached millions who demanded justice, integrity, and courage. The chamber remained still, the tension lingering like smoke after a fire. Jasmine's vow echoed through every corner. No compromise, no surrender, no retreat. The battle had reached its peak. The climax of confrontation laid bare, and one truth resonated beyond question. Courage and truth could topple even the most formidable of walls. And then she struck. Jasmine reached again into her briefcase, pulling out the final pieces of evidence she had meticulously prepared. Emails, recordings, contracts, and statements, each one a nail in the coffin of deception. Every eye in the room followed her hands. Every ear hung on the words that would transform accusation into undeniable proof. "This," she began, voice calm but edged with steel, "is what happens when power is wielded without integrity. This is the record of manipulation, coercion, and abuse. This is the truth you tried to bury under your arrogance, Mr. Trump. And today it surfaces." Trump's lips thinned, his eyes darting nervously, searching for allies in the chamber, but the room was solidly focused on Jasmine. "This is ridiculous! You're spinning tales!" he barked, voice rising, desperation creeping in. Jasmine stepped closer, her gaze sharp, unwavering, piercing through every pretense. "Tales?" she repeated, letting the word hang like a challenge. "These are not tales. They are facts. Your emails, your memos, your own words. They betray your schemes, your greed, your manipulation. You have built walls of illusion around yourself, but every wall has a crack, and yours just became a chasm." The audience gasped. Spectators leaned forward, unable to tear their eyes away. Journalists scribbled furiously, their pens racing against the clock, trying to capture the unfolding storm. Lawyers and aides whispered urgently, sensing that this confrontation was entering a historic crescendo. Trump's hands clenched at the edges of his podium. He tried to pivot, to redirect the narrative, to cast doubt on the evidence. This is political theater. Fabricated. No one will believe." "Fabricated?" Jasmine interrupted sharply, voice slicing through the chamber like a blade. "Every date, every signature, every recording can be verified. You tried to manipulate, to intimidate, to lie your way out of accountability. But here, under the eyes of the nation, under the scrutiny of truth, your games collapse." He leaned forward, voice shaking now, trying to seize control, but the facade had cracked. "You can't. This is absurd. Yes, I can," Jasmine replied, calm but lethal. "Because I speak facts. I wield evidence. I confront lies, and I refuse to be silenced by fear or title. You see, Mr. Trump, power is fleeting. Influence decays. But integrity, courage, truth, those endure. And today they are stronger than you ever imagined." The chamber seemed to vibrate with the force of her words. Every member of Congress was riveted. Even seasoned advisors leaned forward, captivated by the precision and audacity of her assault. The air was charged, every whisper, every glance, every scribble capturing the tension. Trump's eyes flickered with panic as he attempted one last maneuver, pointing to legal technicalities and procedural loopholes. "According to regulation, this cannot stand. You're overreaching. The court, regulations?" Jasmine's voice was deadly calm, each word measured like a scalpel. "Regulations are not shields for deception. Loopholes are not excuses for abuse. You have spent a lifetime twisting rules to hide greed, arrogance, and cruelty. And yet here you are, exposed, unable to deflect the truth. Your maneuvers are transparent, your bluster meaningless." The room erupted in whispers, some standing, some leaning, every heartbeat synchronized with the clash. Jasmine's strategy was flawless. Her logic, her evidence, her sharp words dismantled every defense, every attempt at misdirection, leaving Trump increasingly cornered. He tried to shout, to command, to threaten, but each attempt crumbled under the weight of her rebuttals. Jasmine's eyes bore into his, unwavering and relentless. "Do you see now, Mr. Trump? The illusion of control is gone. The veil of power has lifted. Your tricks, your intimidation, your deception, they are all laid bare. You are outmatched not by politics, but by truth itself." Trump's face paled, the last vestiges of composure slipping away. His hands shook slightly on the podium, his voice caught between fury and disbelief. Every attempt to dominate the chamber ended in silence. Every attack met with precision, every maneuver dismantled by clarity and courage. Jasmine's voice softened only slightly, the steel edge remaining as she delivered the final stroke for the session. This is the lesson of accountability. No title, no wealth, no influence grants immunity. No deception can withstand scrutiny when courage stands unflinching. Today the battlefield is clear, the truth prevails. The chamber erupted, not in chaos but in awe. Members, witnesses, journalists, all recognized that they had witnessed a confrontation of historic magnitude. The scales had tipped irrevocably. The message was clear. Deceit and manipulation crumble under courage, preparation, and unyielding truth. And for those following beyond the chamber walls, every twist, every piercing revelation, and every verbal strike would be captured in vivid detail by Harrison's stories, chronicling the courage, the exposure, and the relentless pursuit of justice for the world to witness. Jasmine straightened one last time, her eyes sweeping across the room, every gesture, every pause, every word signaling that the war was far from over, but that in this arena, the weak would always falter before the strong, and truth, once unleashed, could not be contained. And now it was time to reveal the motive that had driven the chaos, the manipulations, the relentless attacks, the dark, self-serving engine behind Trump's defiance. "Let's not pretend anymore," Jasmine began, voice steady but venomous, echoing across the chamber. "This isn't about leadership, about service, or even politics. No, this is about ambition cloaked in deceit. Power hoarded at the expense of justice. Lies propagated to preserve an empire built on manipulation. Your every move, Mr. Trump, has been fueled by self-interest, greed, and a disregard for the very people you claim to represent." Trump's hands clenched on the podium. He opened his mouth to retaliate, but Jasmine was already in motion, every word a calculated strike. "Do you hear that?" she continued, leaning forward, eyes ablaze. "That is the sound of truth hitting walls you built with arrogance and deceit. Your ambition, thinly veiled as authority, is nothing but a masquerade. Every decision, every policy, every attempt to silence accountability, driven not by vision, but by self-preservation and vanity." The chamber was rapt. Members of Congress shifted in their seats, leaning closer. Journalists froze mid-note, capturing every expression, every syllable. Even Trump's advisors glanced at each other uneasily, sensing the walls of his illusion crumbling. "You mock," Jasmine said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You sneer, you accuse. Naive, reckless, dangerous. Words you've thrown at anyone who dared oppose you. But here, Mr. Trump, you are stripped bare. Every deception, every manipulation, every scheme, it's all visible. And the people see you, not the president, not the icon, not the strategist, just a man desperately clinging to power while the truth laughs at his theatrics." Trump's face darkened, lips curling into a forced snarl. This is preposterous. Lies, fabrications. You're a fool." Jasmine tilted her head slightly, the steel edge in her voice unmistakable. "A fool?" she asked, letting the word linger, mocking. "No, Mr. Trump. The fool is the one who believes he can hide behind money, influence, and bluster forever. The fool is the one who thinks intimidation is equivalent to respect. And the fool is the one who underestimates the power of courage, preparation, and relentless truth." Her words landed like hammer blows. Trump's hands shook slightly, a flicker of panic breaking through his composure. He attempted to pivot, pointing to technicalities and procedural arguments, trying desperately to regain footing. "This is political theater. You're overreaching. You can't." "You can't?" Jasmine's voice rose, calm yet cutting. "Oh, I see. You're used to being untouchable, aren't you? Untouchable because you've cultivated fear, cultivated obedience, cultivated illusions of power. But the truth, Mr. Trump, does not negotiate with tyrants. It exposes, it confronts, and it unmasks. And today, Your motives are no longer hidden behind grandiose speeches or empty boasts. The audience stirred, leaning forward as the weight of her words sank in. The former president's arrogance, his calculated smirk, the facade of control, all unraveling in real time. Every phrase Jasmine delivered chipped away at the fortress of lies he had so meticulously built. Let's not forget the little tricks, she continued, her tone now a precise blend of venom and clarity. The misdirection, the threats, the manipulation of facts, all the schemes designed to bend systems to your will. Every attempt to silence dissent, every smear, every false narrative, it was all for one purpose: your personal gain, your unquenchable thirst for domination. Trump's jaw tightened. He waved his hands, struggling to reclaim attention. But the chamber's focus had shifted irrevocably. The energy was entirely Jasmine's. The audience hung on her every syllable, absorbed by the unrelenting clarity of her indictment. "You see, Mr. Trump," she concluded, leaning lightly on the podium, eyes piercing. "The world is watching. And history will remember that a man who believed himself untouchable was exposed by courage, evidence, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. Your motives, your ambition, your deception, they've been laid bare for everyone to see. And there is no hiding now." A heavy silence followed. Trump's face was a mask of disbelief and simmering anger. The chamber seemed to collectively exhale, the tension thick but charged with resolution. And as always, Harrison's stories ensured that the spectacle, the confrontation, and the revelation of sinister motives reached millions, chronicling every sharp exchange, every piercing word, every fearless act for an audience that demanded justice, integrity, and truth. Jasmine straightened one final time, letting the room absorb the weight of her words. The stage was clear. Courage and truth had triumphed over ambition, deceit, and manipulation. And in that charged silence, one undeniable reality resonated. The weak crumble under scrutiny, the deceitful fall before evidence, and the unflinching heart of justice cannot be silenced. Then it happened. The doors at the far end of the chamber swung open with deliberate force, and a hush fell over the room. A witness stepped forward, carrying documents that had never been seen, videos that had never been leaked, emails that had never surfaced. The energy shifted instantly, eyes widened, pens froze mid-scribble, and every person present sensed the tremor of an entirely new threat to Trump's carefully constructed facade. Jasmine's eyes sparkled with controlled ferocity. She didn't hesitate. "Ah," she said, voice sharp and piercing, "the truth has allies, and today it arrives unannounced, like a hammer falling on deception's fragile roof." Trump's confident composure faltered, his lips parting slightly, a flicker of panic crossing his features. "What is this? Where did this come from? This is impossible," he stammered, his voice unsteady, betraying the first cracks of true fear. Jasmine leaned forward, hands gripping the podium, her presence commanding the room. "Impossible? No, Mr. Trump. This is the cumulative weight of every lie, every manipulation, every corner-cutting scheme you've orchestrated. This witness, these documents, they are not a surprise, they are inevitabilities. Every falsehood leaves a footprint, and today we follow yours straight to the source." The witness stepped closer, holding aloft a stack of files and a tablet. The chamber's atmosphere became electric, charged with anticipation and tension. Cameras whirred, pens scratched, whispers cascaded through the audience. The pieces of the puzzle that Trump had assumed were buried now lay fully exposed, each one a dagger aimed at the heart of his public persona. Jasmine's voice cut through the mounting tension, precise and merciless. "Look closely, everyone. Every email, every recording, every signature, evidence of manipulation, coercion, and self-serving ambition. And yet he dares to act surprised, dares to act innocent. Mr. Trump, your theatrics end here. You've played the nation for fools, and now your performance is ending before an audience that sees through every lie." Trump slammed a hand on the podium, attempting to reclaim control, but his words faltered. This is fabricated. You're spinning stories. Lies, all lies." Jasmine's smile was thin, deadly. "Fabricated?" she repeated, letting the word hang like a guillotine blade. "Every document verifiable. every recording authentic, every witness credible. You've built walls of arrogance and intimidation, thinking they could withstand scrutiny. But walls crumble when the light of truth hits, Mr. Trump. And today, the light has arrived. The chamber seemed to vibrate under her words. Members of Congress leaned forward, captivated. Reporters froze, cameras rolling, pens moving like lightning. Every word Jasmine spoke amplified the gravity of the moment. Every gesture, a calculated strike. Every pause, a hammer blow to the former president's confidence. Trump's hands shook slightly as he gestured wildly, trying to divert attention. This is political theater. This is outrageous. I've done nothing wrong. Nothing. Nothing. Jasmine's voice rose like a whip crack, controlled yet ferocious. You've done everything to deceive, manipulate, and control. Every attempt to silence, every scheme to twist the system in your favor, every lie exposed. You mistake fear for loyalty and bluster for respect. But here, under scrutiny, you are nothing but a man stripped of all pretense. The audience reacted audibly, murmurs, gasps, shifting in seats. Even the most seasoned aides glanced at one another, apprehension and awe mixing in the charged air. Jasmine's strategy was flawless. She had used the third-party witness not merely as evidence, but as a catalyst, igniting a confrontation that left Trump off balance, cornered, exposed. Trump's voice cracked, the last vestiges of composure evaporating. You can't do this. Can't. You're a coward, Jasmine interjected sharply, her voice cold, precise, merciless. A coward hiding behind title, wealth, and fear. Every lie you've told, every manipulation you've orchestrated, every attempt to evade accountability, they crumble before truth. And now there's no hiding, no escape, no ally strong enough to rescue you from what you have sown. The chamber was electric. The fire of confrontation burned hotter than ever. Trump's attempts to regain control were futile. Every syllable he uttered was intercepted, dismantled, and exposed by Jasmine's relentless logic and piercing words. The third party had entered, but Jasmine's mastery of timing, voice, and moral authority had turned it into a weapon of unrelenting exposure. Jasmine straightened one last time, eyes sweeping over the chamber, her aura unshakable. Witnesses may appear, evidence may emerge, but the principle remains. Truth, courage, and justice cannot be silenced by intimidation or power. The weak crumble, the deceitful fall, and the world watches. And history will remember this day. A final hush fell over the room. Trump's face was pale, his hands trembling slightly. Jasmine had turned an unexpected development into an unstoppable force. The chamber, the nation, and history itself had witnessed a moment where courage, truth, and unflinching confrontation shattered the illusions of the mighty. And for the millions following every detail through Harrison's stories, the drama, the revelations, and the fearless pursuit of justice ensured that no viewer would look away. Every heart pounding in sync with the storm that had just engulfed Congress. Now the moment had arrived. The chamber was electric, every nerve taut with anticipation. Trump's eyes blazed with fury, the last traces of composure gone, replaced by raw, unfiltered rage. "You think you've won?" he shouted, voice booming, vibrating against the walls. "You, Crockett, have no idea who you're dealing with." Jasmine's gaze never wavered. She inhaled slowly, letting the tension build, letting every eye lock onto her. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," she replied, calm yet unyielding, each word deliberate, precise, like arrows aimed straight at the heart of deceit. Trump leaned forward, slamming both hands onto the podium, veins bulging. "You are reckless. You are dangerous. You don't understand the power you're challenging." Jasmine's voice rose, clear and sharp, slicing through the air. "Power without conscience is nothing but tyranny in disguise. And you, Mr. Trump, are the embodiment of that tyranny. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to twist the world to your favor, it defines your character. And today, the nation sees it for what it truly is. Base, selfish, corrupt." A ripple ran through the chamber. Spectators held their breath, leaning forward, captivated. The words were more than accusations. They were indictments of character, morals, and every carefully hidden flaw. Trump's jaw tightened. His nostrils flared as he tried to regain dominance. But the arena had shifted irrevocably. "You dare lecture me?" Trump roared, pointing at Jasmine with trembling fingers. "I built empires. I've led nations. You have no right to—" "Right?" Jasmine interrupted, eyes flashing with righteous fire. "The only right that matters here is justice. And you, sir, have spent a lifetime trying to evade it. You've built walls of fear, walls of influence, walls of deception, but they crumble today, beneath scrutiny, beneath courage, beneath truth." Trump's hands shook. He took a step closer, voice dropping to a venomous growl. "You will regret this. You and your little crusade. I will not be humiliated like this in front of the nation." Jasmine's lips curved in a faint, cold smile. She leaned slightly forward, eyes locked on his, unwavering. "Humiliation isn't what you fear. Accountability is. Exposure. Reality. The recognition that no title, no money, no bluster protects you from your actions. Today, that reality is here, in this chamber, in front of witnesses, in front of the world." The tension was almost unbearable. Each breath, each blink, each subtle movement became magnified. Congress members leaned forward, journalists paused mid-typing. Every soul in the room felt the electric charge of the confrontation. Trump shouted again, voice raw with desperation. "This is a witch hunt. You're out of your mind. Do you hear me?" "Yes," Jasmine replied softly, deadly calm. "I hear you, and the world hears you. Not as a leader, not as a statesman, not as an icon, but as a man exposed, as a man whose ambition, greed, and lies have been laid bare. You can rage, threaten, scream, but the truth doesn't flinch. The truth doesn't hide, and the truth will always prevail over fear." A stunned silence fell. Trump's face was pale, sweat beading on his brow. His attempts at intimidation had faltered. Every shouted threat, every gesture of dominance, every surge of anger was met by Jasmine's unshakable calm and piercing words. She stepped slightly closer, voice low, each syllable a scalpel cutting through pretense. "Look around, Mr. Trump. See the witnesses. See the documents. See the evidence. See the nation watching. You can't bully this chamber. You can't manipulate this truth. And you can't escape the consequences of your own actions." Trump staggered slightly, fists clenched, eyes wide. He opened his mouth, but the words stuck. His fury was evident, but the control had slipped entirely. Jasmine's final blow, unrelenting and sharp, left no room for rebuttal, no escape, no victory. The man who had relied on fear and power alone had been exposed by courage, preparation, and unflinching truth. The chamber held its collective breath, the drama at its peak. Then slowly, a ripple of realization spread. Trump's empire of influence, built over decades, had faltered in the face of a single, resolute woman armed with evidence, intellect, and moral courage. Jasmine straightened one last time, eyes sweeping the room. Every glance, every pause, every measured word confirmed a final truth. The battle had been fought, the confrontation won, and justice, truth, and courage had emerged victorious. Outside the chamber, millions watching through Harrison's stories would never forget this moment. The apex of confrontation, the climax of exposure, the ultimate demonstration that no power, no wealth, no bluster can stand against unwavering truth. And as the gavel finally fell, the chamber exhaled collectively. Jasmine had faced the storm, met the threat, and stood unbroken, leaving the nation with an indelible lesson. Courage conquers corruption, and truth cannot be silenced. But the story was not yet over. Trump's face twisted in fury and disbelief, every muscle taut, as the full weight of Jasmine's relentless logic, evidence, and moral authority settled upon him. For the first time in the confrontation, he truly realized the depth of his failure. His schemes, his bluster, his calculated intimidation, they had all collapsed in the face of relentless scrutiny. "You You can't, he sputtered, eyes darting to every corner of the room, seeking an escape, a loophole, a shred of power to reclaim. This is not, this is impossible. Jasmine's gaze never wavered. She stepped forward, voice steady, cutting through his fury like a scalpel. Impossible is the illusion you've lived in, Mr. Trump. Today, the facts, the law, and the truth have proven stronger than your arrogance, stronger than your manipulation, stronger than every lie you've spun for decades. You are defeated, not by politics, not by opinion, but by reality itself. A hush fell over the chamber. Congress members leaned forward, journalists froze mid-typing, witnesses held their breath. Every syllable, every gesture, every subtle movement became magnified in the charged silence. The defeat of a man who had relied on power alone was palpable, an almost tangible force in the room. But then, a flicker of mischief, or desperation, crossed Trump's eyes. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a menacing growl. You think this ends here? You think this is over? One way or another? The fight isn't done. Jasmine's lips curved in a thin, knowing smile. Ah, the twist. The final attempt to regain control, the last desperate lunge. But here's the truth, Mr. Trump. This fight may continue outside this chamber, in courtrooms, in headlines, in whispers, but it will never be on your terms again. The rules have changed. Courage, preparation, and truth now set the pace. And you? You are no longer leading. You are reacting. And reacting is losing. The chamber reacted. A collective shiver ran through the audience, a mixture of awe, shock, and exhilaration. Even the most seasoned lawyers and aides were momentarily speechless, witnessing a confrontation that transcended politics. An intellectual, moral, and emotional duel executed with flawless precision. Trump slammed a hand onto the podium again, but his threats were hollow, hollow as the walls of pretense he had built. This is a setup. You'll regret. Regret? Jasmine interrupted, voice slicing through the tension like lightning. Regret is yours, sir. You will look back and see every lie, every manipulation, every act of deceit laid bare. And you will understand, too late, that truth, evidence, and courage do not bow to intimidation, they do not fear threats, and they certainly do not yield to arrogance. The room seemed to vibrate under the weight of her words. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras captured every expression, and even the audience members who had doubted her now leaned forward, captivated by the unflinching authority she wielded. Trump's eyes darted around, desperate, calculating. This isn't over, he said, voice low, almost whispering, yet venomous. I'll be back. You'll see. Jasmine straightened fully, letting the words settle over the chamber. Perhaps, she said softly, with the calm ferocity of someone who has already won the battle that mattered most. But the tide has turned. Today the nation has seen the truth, and no comeback, no scheme, no threat can erase what has been exposed here. Your time in the shadows of fear is over. The light is now permanent. A collective gasp swept through the room as the reality of the moment sank in. Trump's attempt at a final disruption had failed spectacularly, eclipsed by Jasmine's precision, courage, and unrelenting logic. The twist, a potential last maneuver, had been met and neutralized without a flinch. Jasmine glanced over the chamber, eyes meeting those of journalists, witnesses, and members of Congress alike. Her stance, her calm, her command over the narrative left an unmistakable mark. The confrontation had ended, the victor was clear, and the principles of justice, truth, and integrity had triumphed. Outside, millions following through Harrison's stories felt the impact ripple through every screen, every insult countered, every deception exposed, every desperate maneuver thwarted. It all unfolded in real time, leaving the audience both breathless and exhilarated. And as the chamber slowly returned to its routines, the echoes of the confrontation lingered, a reminder that even the most formidable of forces cannot withstand unwavering courage and unflinching truth. Jasmine's final words, spoken not as a shout but as a resolute affirmation, reverberated in the hearts of all present. History remembers the brave. History remembers those who stand for truth, and today history remembers courage prevailing over corruption. Trump slumped slightly, defeated yet still smoldering, while Jasmine, unbroken and commanding, had turned what could have been a final threat into her ultimate display of dominance, control, and moral victory. The chamber exhaled, the nation watched, and one truth became undeniable. Courage, intellect, and integrity had triumphed. Not with violence, not with bluster, but with clarity, precision, and unflinching moral authority. In the days that followed, Jasmine Crockett became a symbol, a living testament to what it meant to stand unyielding in the face of overwhelming power. Headlines hailed her as a warrior of justice, a defender of truth, and the embodiment of the principles the nation claimed to uphold, but too often failed to realize. Every corner of the media, every conversation on the streets, every discussion in homes across the country echoed the same realization. Jasmine had not only won a battle, she had set a standard. Her recognition was immediate. Lawmakers, both allies and former skeptics, acknowledged the precision and courage with which she dismantled decades of manipulation and deceit. Social platforms buzzed with support, admiration, and even disbelief at the sheer audacity and skill she had displayed. Her poise, her intellect, and her unwavering commitment to justice had captured the hearts of millions, turning what began as a confrontation in a chamber into a national spectacle of accountability and moral courage. Meanwhile, Trump faced the sharp edge of consequence. Legal experts pored over the evidence presented, and investigations, long anticipated but often stalled, gained unprecedented momentum. Political allies distanced themselves, wary of association with a figure whose influence had been publicly exposed as vulnerable to scrutiny. Public opinion shifted in waves, leaving Trump isolated, forced to navigate a storm of accountability that he had long avoided. Every threat, every attempt to intimidate, every public statement now carried the weight of a man who had been unmasked before the eyes of the nation. Yet the twist lingered. Trump still sought avenues to stir disruption, to claw back control, to inject chaos. But Jasmine remained unfazed, her focus unwavering. Each move he made was anticipated, each attempt to distract neutralized with precision. She had mastered not only the confrontation itself, but the art of maintaining authority, of turning potential threats into demonstrations of her strength. In this arena, the lesson was absolute. The courageous and prepared do not merely withstand pressure, they transform it into victory. The chamber, once a battleground of words and wills, now stood as a testament to accountability. The echoes of that historic confrontation lingered in the air, and the witnesses, lawmakers, and journalists carried its weight forward. Every glance, every note, every recollection of Jasmine's decisive articulation became part of the narrative of courage overcoming fear, principle defeating pretense. Trump, confronted with the undeniable truth, could do little beyond posturing and empty declarations. The legal ramifications, now gathering force, threatened to redefine his political and personal trajectory. Yet even in defeat, he remained a stark reminder of the forces that had opposed Jasmine: power, intimidation, and manipulation. Her victory was not merely personal, it was emblematic, a beacon illuminating the path for accountability and moral clarity in a nation too often clouded by corruption and falsehood. Jasmine herself, standing quietly in the aftermath, reflected the calm of someone who had not only faced the storm but mastered it. Her gaze, steady and resolute, met those of the spectators, the journalists, and the citizens watching across the country. She had fought not for fame, not for recognition, but for principle, for the integrity of justice, and for the voices that had long been silenced. And in doing so, she had proven that true courage requires neither theatrics nor intimidation, only steadfast dedication to what is right. In the weeks that followed, Jasmine's influence only grew. Policies were scrutinized, procedures reevaluated, and the nation engaged in debates over justice, ethics, and accountability that had been dormant for decades. Trump's attempts to regain the narrative faltered against the clear, compelling record Jasmine had established. The confrontation had not only changed the course of one hearing, it had shifted the broader landscape of public consciousness, reinforcing that integrity, when wielded with skill and courage, could overcome even the most entrenched power. And as the dust settled, the lesson became undeniable. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it speaks with clarity, precision, and unyielding resolve. Integrity does not bend to threats. It exposes falsehoods and holds them to account. And truth, when championed by those willing to stand unflinchingly, leaves an indelible mark on history. Jasmine Crockett walked from the chamber not just as a victor, but as a symbol. Proof that one person, armed with intellect, courage, and principle, could face the greatest of adversaries and prevail. And for the millions who followed every twist, every confrontation, every explosive moment through Harrison's stories, the story would remain a defining testament to justice, resilience, and the unassailable power of truth. In a world where power often overshadows principle, Jasmine Crockett's journey reminds us that courage and integrity are the true forces that shape history. One person, unwavering in truth and guided by conscience, can illuminate the darkness, challenge corruption, and inspire change far beyond themselves. May this story teach us that standing for what is right, even when the odds are stacked, the threats immense, and the path uncertain, defines not only our legacy, but the very soul of a just and compassionate world. If this confrontation stirred something in you, don't scroll past. Feel it, talk about it, challenge it, like, comment, and share with someone who believes courage and truth still matter. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where no lie goes unchecked and no voice of justice is silenced. Hit the bell, because the next story will confront power even harder. It's raw, it's unfiltered, and it might just change how you see integrity, authority, and courage. This story is a fictional dramatization, inspired by real struggles against corruption and injustice. Any resemblance to actual people or events is coincidental or symbolic to reflect on the fight for truth. Thanks for watching. Justice isn't given, it's earned. This is Harrison Stories.